Did a U.S. warship pass through the Taiwan Strait?
有些厂商是急于出货，但是有些厂商还是观望的态度。
Auto parts makers and other big exporters worry about Donald Trump's tariff policy, but the government here has a plan.
It might be easier to deal with Zelensky. So far, it's been harder.
Washington and Kyiv are at odds again over proposals to end the war in Ukraine. Plus,
they may look like futuristic explorers, but these are the guides of Tech World, Taiwan's pavilion at Expo 2025. We look into their inspiration behind their adventurous uniforms.
Good evening, welcome to TaiwanPlus News. I'm Joyce Tseng. A U.S. Navy ship appears to have sailed through the Taiwan Strait on Wednesday. The transit has not been confirmed by Taiwan or the U.S., but maritime data is showing the presence of a vessel in the strait. Jaime Okan has more.
Open source websites that track maritime data are tracking some kind of government or U.S. military ship that entered the Taiwan Strait on Tuesday, April 22nd. Its last known location is somewhere in waters southwest off the coast of southern Kaohsiung. Neither the U.S. military nor Taiwan's military has confirmed the transit, but Taiwan's defense ministry has told us that they are monitoring the situation. Now, it's important to remember that these kinds of transits are not unusual, as the U.S. normally operates military aircraft and ships in this region as a freedom of navigation exercise. The last transit was back in February. China has not yet lodged a formal complaint, but has sent military aircraft to that same region. Recently, the U.S. military has wanted to pivot its focus to the Indo-Pacific region, with Taiwan as a core focus. Taiwan's military says it's set to receive hundreds of missiles for the U.S.-made Patriot missile defense system, specifically the PAC-3 MSE, which is one of the newest and most advanced variants of the system. Earlier, I spoke to Kelly Greco, a security analyst from the Stimson Center based in Washington, D.C., and she says that this specific weapon can tell us a lot about how the U.S. and Taiwan are working together to counter China.
I think it's quite noticeable that the sales that we're talking about is the PAC-3 MSE and not the F-35, because the air defense systems are consistent with an asymmetric defense, becoming a porcupine. The F-35 is not. And so one of the things it tells me perhaps is that DC is going to be more inclined to approve these kinds of sales when they see it's consistent with the asymmetric defense that they think is in the best interest of Taiwan and U.S. interests. I think that the administration has been clear about that. So it wants it to spend more, and it also wants it to spend better. So making sure that when you do spend those funds, you're spending it in a way that you're getting the maximum capability, the maximum deterrent and defense for each dollar that you're spending on that defense budget.
We're only hearing that Taiwan is receiving several hundred of these missiles, and we don't have an exact amount. But if there was a conflict between China and the United States and Taiwan, is that amount enough, the several hundred?
It is unbelievable how quickly you can go through these interceptors. At the Stimson Center, I recently wrote a report looking at Chinese missile threats to U.S. air bases in the Indo-Pacific. And even when we had really large numbers of interceptors, more than actually exist in the U.S. inventory, one of the things that we found is that within 36 hours, we were out of interceptors in our simulation. So you could just go, you can burn through these really quickly. And that then becomes a question of strategy. How are you going to employ these systems? And so we'd all like to create a defensive shield, like an impenetrable defensive shield that would prevent an adversary missile from being able to come through and strike an air base or a city. That's really not feasible to do that.
Sources within the military say that the weapon systems should be arriving this year as well as next year, and more arms sales will continue as U.S. and Taiwan continue to bolster their defense ties. Patrick Chen, Kamashu, and Jaime Okan in Taipei for TaiwanPlus.
Taiwan's cabinet has unveiled its more than $12 billion economic package to provide relief from potential U.S. tariffs and strengthen the economy as a whole.
会影响到台湾未来的，不仅仅是只有美国的对等关税、贸易的政策改变而已，还有就是全球贸易秩序会重整，而且会影响到整体的国际情势。因此，政府更必须做好全面的准备。
Nearly $3 billion is allocated for tariff relief, a more than 5% increase from earlier plans. The remaining funds are slated for 10 other key areas, including the defense and agricultural sectors. Nearly a quarter of the package would go to the national power utility, Taipower, which has seen more than $12 billion in losses in recent years. The package will now go to the opposition-controlled legislature for approval, but some opposition lawmakers have already come out against it.
我们的行政院，我不晓得他们脑袋里面在装什么东西啊！去年超增的，再加上今年被在野党，在我们严格的监督把关下面省下来的2076亿，加起来刚好4100亿，全部把它包在一个特别条例里面，然后骗台湾人民说这要因应高关税。
The ruling Democratic Progressive Party will need the support of at least 6 opposition lawmakers to pass the plan. For more on the new economic package and Taiwan's economy in light of U.S. tariff threats, Chris Gorin spoke to Nick Marrow from the Economist Intelligence Unit.
Nick, let's start with this more than $12 billion package the cabinet has just announced. Do you think it's enough to offset the potential damage from U.S. tariffs?
Well, I mean, whether it's enough is very much going to depend on kind of the final composition of these tariffs. But what we do know is that government spending this year was slated to be slashed by quite a historic amount. And so when we think about our own forecast for Taiwan, we were always expecting government consumption to be one of the bigger drags, given the fact that politicking in the legislative yuan was really kind of having implications for the growth story. I mean, if the government can't execute its budget, or if it's, implementing its spending plans with a lot less fiscal resources than it had initially planned for, then there are consequences for that. And so higher spending in the context of what was already happening in Taiwan is going to be a good thing anyway.
Well, let's pull back a little bit. There have been divergent estimates on Taiwan's economic growth for this year. The IMF forecasts 2.9% growth, while local think tank SEER gave estimates as low as 0.16%. Where do you fall on this question?
Well, there is a very wide range of forecast calls right now, which I think is reflective of how uncertain the global environment is at the current time. Tariffs are really going to make or break the Taiwan growth story this year. Now, for us at EIU, we are more bullish than I think the rest of the market. Our growth forecast is around 3.5%. And the reason why it's so high is because when we look at Taiwanese exported semiconductors, Taiwanese exported electronics, they're what we call inelastic goods. These are goods that are hard to substitute. And so even despite everything that's going on with the tariffs, we're expecting there to be exemptions. We're expecting there to be negotiations that would insulate Taiwanese trade flows. Taiwan is irreplaceable in many ways. And that's going to be something that not only Taiwanese policymakers have to think about, but also U.S. policymakers in terms of how aggressive they can push their hawkish trade policy.
So do you see this as the anti-tariff version of Taiwan's so-called Silicon Shield?
I think it is. I mean, I think Silicon Shield is an interesting concept in the sense of, how it relates to national defense. But Taiwan indisputably occupies a very advantageous part of the global value chain. I think even the concerns that we have around Taiwan, Taiwanese companies investing in other markets and whether this is going to reduce that Silicon Shield, I think those are somewhat misplaced, given that the crown jewels, the most innovative semiconductors, the most advanced production, that all still seems to be very much localized in Taiwan, and we don't see that changing anytime soon.
That was Nick Marrow from the Economist Intelligence Unit. Taiwan's labor minister says more than 100,000 jobs are at risk if Donald Trump's new tariffs come into force. John Van Trieste reports on how industries are bracing for the blow.
Made in Taiwan. This trade show in Taipei is showcasing the best of the country's auto industry, from traditional auto parts to smart electric vehicles. But while there's plenty of action here, there's a shadow hanging over the event. U.S. President Donald Trump's unpredictable tariff policy. Many of these products go into cars sold in the U.S., and tariffs could bite hard.
我们汽车零配件整体的出口值达到2285亿台币，所以可以说是一个非常重要的产业。当然，我们的业者呢会全力的来应变。
The uncertainty over tariffs has led to two reactions in the auto parts industry.
有些厂商是急于出货，但是有些厂商还是观望的态度。欧一厂供应链的话，它必须及时上工，它零件必须马上巨大。
And auto parts are just one of the many export-reliant Taiwan industries bracing for a hit. Labor Minister Hong Sun-han says machinery, plastics, and even sink taps and other plumbing equipment stand to suffer a particular blow. He says over 100,000 jobs are at risk. But the government says it has a plan. The cabinet aims to set aside almost $12.6 billion to help firms get through the rough times that might be ahead. The government is also negotiating with Washington. There's talk of more Taiwanese imports of U.S. goods. And then there's one of the jewels in Taiwan's economic crown, semiconductor giant TSMC. The firm said in March it was going to invest a further $100 billion into the United States, where it's already opening plants in Arizona. The economy minister has told lawmakers that this is just one of the bargaining chips Taiwan holds.
我们现在手上有什么筹码？你刚才讲的这个部分，我们也可以列入这个筹码考虑之一啦，哈。但是我们筹码有很多，报告委员，我们不是只有一个筹码，哈，请你相信政府。
As the details of Taiwan's response come together, the country's exporters must wait and see on the true extent of the tariff impact and of any government assistance. Eason Pan and John Van Trieste for TaiwanPlus.
Taiwan will be represented at Pope Francis's funeral on Saturday, not by the country's head of state, but by a former vice president. That's despite the government saying President Lai Ching-te wanted to attend. For more, Louise Watt spoke to Tseng, a senior research fellow at the Society for Strategic Studies, ROC.
The foreign ministry said that it had been negotiating for Taiwan's president to attend the Pope's funeral, but that appears to have failed. What would the issues have been during these negotiations?
I would argue that it is the immoral to declare or to express the intention that President Lai would like to join the ceremony, before it can actually confirm. We should understand all the diplomatic maneuver is always containing some risk. So you can only say we are going to send a group to join the ceremony, but you should never specifically say that our president won't go there, simply because it failed to negotiate. There are many factors containing in this diplomatic negotiation, given the current status of the Republic of China now in the international community. We should also understand the Holy See. There are some factors that cannot be totally controlled by the Holy See. After all, the Pope is not actually buried in the St. Peter's Chapel. They are actually buried in another site, which is geographically located in Italy. Please remember that according to the list of what we have seen at the moment, they come from Europe. And with a lot of countries, even from South America, they have very strong Catholic background. So comparatively, Taiwan, we don't have such a strong Catholic background.
Taiwan will be represented by a former vice president, so not even a serving government official. What kind of impression do you think this gives?
I think this is actually an excellent choice because given the previous background and very intensive engagement with the Holy See, and the former Vice President Chen, he himself is a Catholic, a very faithful Catholic.
That was Tseng from the Society for Strategic Studies, ROC. TaiwanPlus reached out to the Vatican's Taipei embassy on why President Lai could not attend, but it said it would not comment. A former U.S. Army analyst has been sentenced to 7 years in prison for spying for China. 25-year-old Corbin Schultz pled guilty last August to selling classified U.S. military data to a person he believed was affiliated with the Chinese government. The information involved U.S. military capabilities and plans for defending Taiwan, including lessons learned from Russia's invasion of Ukraine. In exchange, U.S. federal prosecutors said that Schultz accepted bribes of around $42,000 U.S. Environmental officials are defending the killing of a Formosan black bear in eastern Taiwan. The bear had repeatedly attacked livestock and pets in an indigenous village in Hualien County. A team sent to capture the animal shot it when they found it attacking a dog and turned aggressively towards them. It was later put down due to the severity of its wounds. Formosan black bears are endemic to Taiwan. Their numbers are on the rise, but they still remain protected. The incident has prompted calls for better animal management strategies. Taiwan's pavilion at Expo 2025 in Osaka is now officially open. The country is using the event to highlight its digital innovation and cultural beauty. But it's not all about the pavilion. It's also about what people are wearing. Sandy Chi has more.
Meet the guides of Tech World. They're ready to take visitors on a journey through Taiwan's pavilion at Expo 2025 in Osaka, promising an experience of Taiwan's beauty and digital power. And if you look closely, even their uniforms can transport visitors to the heart of the island nation. The outfits, designed by Liao Jialing, known as the Queen of Uniforms in Taiwan, are the result of months of planning. The design is inspired by a unique Taiwanese tree, the Taiwania fir, the only tree in the world that includes Taiwan in its botanical name. It's hard for Taiwan to present itself on the world stage. Here at Expo 2025, like at many other international events, it doesn't have an official pavilion. Liao says she used the fir, which the country's indigenous Lukai people call the tree that touches the moon, as a symbol of Taiwan's cultural roots.
有一种树木叫做台湾杉，那我很希望借用这个台湾杉，能够让世界人看到，虽然我们台湾的政治处境，我们不能常常用台湾出名，可是我们可以用台湾杉来表现台湾的物种。
The uniforms are made of earth-toned, eco-friendly fabrics, featuring digitally printed sketch-style illustrations.
我们也用了很多的环保的 布料，像里头就有保特瓶回收，这是最基本的，还有牡蛎壳，所以这些都是台湾特有的布料。
From research and design to fabric selection and production, Liao says these uniforms are the most challenging pieces she's crafted in her 35-year career. Many of the details are made by hand, and she says the fabrics made it difficult to embroider.
我们也希望，因为借由这样子的工序，能够让 虽然只是一个导览人员的制服，可是我希望让他们看到台湾的工艺。
Liao also took practicality into account, knowing the guides will have to wear the uniforms through different seasons and temperatures. The jacket has 50 hidden buttons, allowing guides to easily remove the sleeves if needed. Their uniforms are inspired by the look of an explorer ready to embark on a journey. It's meant to show Taiwan's resilience and pride, standing strong on the global stage despite all the challenges ahead. Henshu, Pichizhuang, and Sanichi in Osaka for TaiwanPlus.
Stay tuned for more coverage of Expo 2025 from Osaka this week. Coming up after the break, meet the Indonesian woman turning to nature to protect her home from climate change. Stay tuned.
We bring you stories from Taiwan.
Every day of the week.
Our reporters travel the nation.
Exploring the issues that matter to you.
News from here in Taiwan and around the world.
What's up, Taiwan? On TaiwanPlus. For more stories from Taiwan and around the world, download the TaiwanPlus app.
Welcome back. You're watching TaiwanPlus News. Washington says its patience with Ukraine is growing thin, repeating threats the U.S. may be about to give up on trying to forge a peace deal in Europe. Reese Ayers reports.
A Russia-Ukraine peace deal is ready to go, but there's one man standing in its way, says Washington, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky.
I think we have a deal with Russia. We have to get a deal with Zelensky, and I hope that Zelensky, I thought it might be easier to deal with Zelensky. So far, it's been harder.
US threats to abandon peace brokering between Kyiv and Moscow are growing. This week, top US officials pulled out of a London meeting on the issue. Now Washington says its patience is growing thin as the Ukrainian president apparently drags his feet on the deal.
But you need both sides of the war willing to do that. And unfortunately, President Zelensky seems to be moving in the wrong direction.
But what's in this peace deal exactly? The US-crafted proposal explicitly bans Ukraine from joining NATO, a key concern for Russian President Vladimir Putin. It also calls on Kyiv to cede much of the land it's already lost, including Crimea, annexed by Russia in 2014. But for Zelensky, that's just not an option.
Ukraine does not legally recognize the occupation of Crimea. There's nothing to talk about. It is outside our constitution. This is our territory, the territory of the people of Ukraine.
Just last night, the streets of Ukraine's capital, Kyiv, were filled with sirens and explosions, as missiles and drone strikes killed at least 9 people and injured dozens more. Despite Russia's full-scale invasion being deep into its 3rd year, the people in this city remain defiant.
Crimea is certainly a part of Ukraine, and it's not up to any discussion. We do not need peace at this price. Boys have been dying for more than 10 years, and we cannot betray them.
There will be another country to mediate. The United States is not the only option.
While Trump says he has no favorites in this fight,
I have no favorites.
The terms of the deal do seem to favor Russia, but the side that the US is really backing may just be itself.
The US just wants any deal, and that it doesn't matter whether it's a good deal for Ukraine or a good deal for Russia. They want to be able to show that they are a broker and maybe a power player.
Zelensky, now in South Africa for more diplomatic outreach, says that Ukraine is ready to talk with Russia when a ceasefire is agreed. But whether Washington will be there too remains an uncomfortable uncertainty. Scott Huang and Rhys Ayres for TaiwanPlus.
India has downgraded diplomatic ties with Pakistan after an attack in the disputed Kashmir region left 26 people dead. New Delhi expelled its neighbor's defense attachés and pulled some of its own diplomats from Pakistan. India also suspended a decades-old agreement that allowed the two countries to share water from the Indus River system. On Wednesday, a militant group attacked tourists in Kashmir's Pahalgam area, killing and injuring dozens. India's foreign minister linked the attack to Pakistan. Over 200 people were injured when a magnitude 6.2 earthquake struck western Turkey, one of the most powerful in recent years. Turkey's disaster agency says the earthquake's epicenter was 80 kilometers west of the country's largest city, Istanbul. The quake sent people rushing out of buildings and into parks as dozens of aftershocks continued to shake the region. There have been no reported deaths or major damage. Can you imagine your home being swept away by rising sea levels? Well, that's a likely outcome for this woman in Indonesia, who has turned to nature in a bid to keep her house afloat. Izzy Wells reports.
In this small village on the northern coast of Java, Indonesia, Persija now has to get around on a makeshift boat. She's battling the rising tides that long drove out her neighbours in an area that was once dry. But determined to stay in a home of 35 years, she's not giving in so easily.
The floodwaters come in waves, gradually, not all at once. I realized that after the waters began rising, I needed to plant mangrove trees so that they could spread and provide protection for the house from the wind and the waves.
Persija says she plants around 15,000 saplings every year and has been doing it for the past 2 decades to protect her family home from the floodwaters. A battle that is an inescapable reality for many in Indonesia, with its coastline spanning around 81,000 kilometers, making it even more susceptible to the impacts of climate change. But it's not just global warming that's to blame.
Dari 100%
Of all these land subsidence issues, human activities on land such as building and development contribute 70 to 80%. There have been multiple studies on this. The remaining 20 to 30% is caused by climate change.
10% of the mangrove forests along the North Java coast, like the ones Pasija works hard to grow, have been affected by government developments like roads and highways. Pasija says she's asked officials to stop construction, but her pleas have been ignored. And with the tides rising as they are, Pasija is also no longer able to grow her own food. She and her family have had to find a way to adjust to this new reality.
I'm no longer concerned about how I feel about being isolated here, since I decided to stay here, so we take all these hurdles with a pinch of salt. If we really wanted to go ashore, we go to the nearest land in Pandansari or to the market. Once again, I have the intention to stay here, and my feelings for this house persist.
With more than 17,000 islands, Indonesia is the largest archipelago in the world. To help defend against the threat of rising sea levels, the government here has promised a 700-kilometre seawall to protect the coastline. But with construction estimated to take 20 to 40 years, for now, these mangroves are serving as Pasija's lifeline in her battle against the tides. Justin Wu and Izzy Wells for TaiwanPlus.
Thank you for joining us for Taiwan Plus News. Be sure to visit the Taiwan Plus website and follow our social media. Finally, let's bring you more shots from Osaka, where popular manga characters are being featured in Japan's World Expo Pavilion. I'm Joyce. Take care. We'll see you next time.